Good morning, UUMAN. I'm Greg Wagner, a UUMAN member. On behalf of Reverend Dave Dunn, Director of Religious Exploration Lexi T. Brown, Music Director Alex Peach, and my fellow worship associates and the dedicated technical team that is making today's live stream possible, I would like to welcome you to Unitarian Universalist Metro Atlanta North Congregation, which we lovingly call UUMAN. We are a liberal faith community with a mission to nurture our spirit, strive for justice, and transform the world. No matter who you are, who you love, or where you are on your spiritual journey, you're welcome here. If there are any of you visiting us for the first time, please, and feel comfortable doing so, please rise as you are able, as well, and identify and introduce yourself so we can worship with one another as friends. Are there any first-time visitors on my left? Yes, sir.
I'm Ben. He just moved here from Chicago.
Welcome. And on my right? Oh, I'm sorry, I missed you. Welcome, Jennifer. Welcome. And now on my right, I haven't missed anybody else, have I? I have. Welcome back. No one else. I missed some folks on the right. All right. Also, if you're visiting us for the first time, please feel free to scan the QR code on the back of your printed order of worship or the code located at the greeters table to get in touch. We have a few adult enrichment offerings this morning, and please refer to your order of service for the class locations. All ages are welcome in service. In addition to the fidget shelf in the sanctuary, over in that direction, there's no shelf today, just some baskets. There will be a basket of fidget toys in the fellowship hall where we will be showing the live stream service on a TV. Those who choose this option will need to stay with their children and supervise them in the fellowship hall. Children and youth religious exploration classes are held during second hour at 11:15 in Discovery Hall. Interested in learning more about Unitarianism, UUMAN, or interested in becoming a member? Join us for the next UU 101, which will be held on Sundays, October 1st and 8th during second hour, lasting until about 1 p.m. Sign up at the greeters table or speak to Laura Keck or Jane Sewell. We will also be putting sign-up information in UUMAN announcements in the upcoming weeks. Did you know that last month's UUMAN solar panels generated 1.4 megawatt hours of electricity, saving us $162, and more importantly, 16 trees? Details about our solar-powered energy production can be seen on the running slideshow in the rear of the fellowship hall. Music Share will meet in the sanctuary during second hour after the service this Sunday, today. Come to sing, play, and or listen. And now let us greet one another in the hand or elbow of friendship.
That was Penelope, right? No? Oh, that wasn't Penelope? Oh, that was somebody else. Good morning, all. We join together to celebrate this dance we dance. It is a dance of life. It's also a dance of death. It is a dance of infinitude. It is a dance of finitude. It is a dance of supplication. It is a dance of surrender. It is a dance of grief. It is a dance of joy. It is a dance of grace, and it is a dance of love. With that, let us now light our chalice together.
May the light of truth illumine our minds. May the spark of love set our hearts on fire. May the flame of freedom burn brightly within us, now and always. And now, if you will turn to hymn number 311, Alex will play the song first through, and then we will begin singing.
times and the bad times too. Let it be a dance. Everybody turn and spin. You let your body learn to bend. And like a willow with a spin. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. A child is born to hold the sky. A time for joy, a time to cry. Take it as it passes by. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Dance, dance with you. Through the good times and the bad times too. Let it be a dance. Morning star comes out at night. Without the dark there is no light. If nothing's wrong, then nothing's right. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Let the sunshine, let it rain. Share the laughter, bear the pain. Round and round we go again. Let it be a dance.
At this point in our service, we share our joys with each other to magnify them and our sorrows to divide the weight of the pain. If you are so moved, please feel free to come forward, drop a pebble in the bowl, and express a joy or a sorrow that you may have. For those of you attending via our live stream, if you have a joy or a sorrow that you would like to share this morning, please type it in the chat.
I'm Don Gross. This is a pebble of memory for my father who passed away on this date 25 years ago. I still miss him.
I'm John Patanian, sharing a pebble of joy for my dad who turned 90 on Thursday.
My name is Shelley, and this is a pebble of sorrow for the loss of my brother Scott on Tuesday. I hadn't seen him in quite a while, but I am feeling a great loss.
This pebble is for the sorrow of the human traffic issue. That's obviously been around for a long time, but now we're realizing it's right here in our backyard. So this is for the 20 folks that were recovered this week, and the hope that many more will be helped.
One's for you, Jim Nickens.
And one final pebble for all those joys and sorrows still too tender to escape the folds of our hearts. Let us keep one another in our thoughts for the coming week.
Badger was dependable, reliable, and always ready to help when help was needed. He was also very old. Yes, he knew almost everything, but he knew that it would soon be his time to die. He was really not afraid of death. Death was just leaving the body behind. And since he was old, his body didn't really work that well. What he was afraid of was the sorrow that all his animal friends would feel for him. Hoping to prepare them, he would tell them it would soon be his time to go down the long tunnel. And he told them to not be too sad. One afternoon, he was watching his friends Mole and Frog play and frolic in a hillside, in a field on a hillside. They were playing tag and running after one another, and Badger wanted to play, but because he was old, he really couldn't join in. But he got great enjoyment and joy out of simply watching his friends play on the hillside. It was late when he arrived home that night. He built a fire and had a nice bowl of soup. Then he sat down in his rocking chair and he wrote a letter and set it on the table next to his rocking chair. And soon he fell asleep while he was rocking. And he dreamed a dream that he had never dreamed before. He was running. He was running. He didn't need his cane. His legs felt strong. And he was running down this tunnel, and he felt so joyful. And soon, his feet lifted off the ground, and he was floating, like he was floating out of his body. The following day, Badger's friends gathered anxiously at his door because he didn't come out to greet them as he did every day. Fox went in to investigate, and he came out and broke the news that Badger had died. And Fox read the note. The note said, "Gone down the long tunnel, goodbye." Everyone was sad, especially Mole. He cried himself to sleep that night. Outside, winter had begun, and the snow was falling, and it covered the countryside. But it couldn't cover the sorrow that the animals felt at the passing of Badger. Badger had always been there whenever anyone needed Badger. He told them not to be unhappy, but it was hard not to be. But then winter ended and spring arrived. And the animals gathered and told stories about Badger. Mole was excellent with scissors, yet it was Badger who taught him how to use the scissors. Badger taught him to fold a single piece of paper up many times and cut in a certain fashion, and when he was done cutting, it would be a string of animals all strung together. And Mole was so overjoyed when he could do that on his own. And he became an expert with scissors. Frog was an excellent skater, yet it was Badger who taught him how to skate. He patiently held his hand while Frog took his first slippery steps on the ice. And Frog was overjoyed when he could finally take leaps and twists and jumps without falling. Fox always looked very dapper, yet it was Badger who taught him how to tie a tie. In fact, Fox became such an expert at knots that he invented some of his own knots that only he knew. Each animal had a special memory of Badger. Badger had given each animal a parting gift, a gift that became even more precious when that gift could be shared with others. As the last of the snow melted, so did the animals' sadness. Whenever Badger's name was mentioned, new stories were told, and it brought a smile to everyone's face. One warm spring day, Mole went out to the field, the same field where he was frolicking around with Frog. It was the last time that Mole saw Badger, last place he saw Badger. He looked up and thanked Badger for his parting gifts. "Thank you, Badger," he said, thinking that Badger could hear him. And somehow, Badger did.
The younger generation of Americans are quite stubborn, you know. Of course, not all, but some have a very, very hard attitude. Enough, even though they talk about love and freedom or naturalness, they do not understand these things, and they cannot understand what Zen is in that way. If you want to study Zen, then you should forget all your previous ideas of love, freedom, and naturalness, and just practice Zazen, sitting meditation. Practice without effort is not true practice. You must be true to your own way until at last you actually come to the point where you see it is necessary to forget all about yourself. Until you come to this point, it is not completely mistaken to think that whatever you do is Zen, or that it does not matter whether you practice or not. Just to continue should be your purpose. When you do something, just do it should be your purpose. Just practice Zazen, sitting meditation, and see what kind of experience you have in your practice. That is naturalness.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you, choir. The disciples' obedience must be given gladly. Speaking and teaching are the master's task. The disciple is to be silent and listen. The disciples' obedience must be given gladly. Speaking and teaching are the master's task. The disciple is to be silent and listen. That quote is taken from the Rule of Saint Benedict, written in the 6th century. It is the standard, the methodology, the praxis for Christian monastics. It's still used today. The word Islam means submission to the will of God. A Muslim is one who submits. Zen monk Shinichiro Suzuki says, "We cannot force anything, but once the rules have been decided, we should obey them completely until they are changed. It is not a matter of good or bad, convenient or inconvenient. You just do it without question." Submission and obedience. We think of them as being the opposite of freedom. We think submission and obedience, we think of them as being mutually exclusive from freedom. I mean, they are opposites, correct? I mean, they are mutually exclusive. I mean, freedom is like the ability to do, the ability to act, the ability to decide for oneself without infringement. Submission and obedience sound like infringements on freedom. What does it mean to submit to the will of God? In Islam, one can't submit to the will of God until they relinquish all their attachments, all their desires, all their addictions, and this includes addictions to the self and the ego. And although generally translated as submit, the word Islam is generally translated as submitting. The root of the Arabic word salam, upon which the word Islam is based, the root of that word, salam, is peace. So for a Muslim, relinquishing all their attachments and desires, addictions, including the self, brings peace. In Buddhism, Zen or otherwise, it works the same way. Many religions work the same way. Again, we think of submission and obedience as being the opposite of, mutually exclusive with freedom. To many religions, the thinking mind is another unhealthy attachment. According to the practice of yoga, an entire philosophy that is much more than just poses. The philosophy of yoga, at its root, yoga means the cessation of the turnings of thought. That is yoga in its root. Many Unitarian Universalists, myself included, get caught up in the turnings of thought, the ego of thought, the attachment to thought. This might even be a form of denial in a way. We like to think. We like to solve problems. We like to keep our minds busy, so maybe we don't, address something that's really hurtful going on in life. And as shocking as it might sound to Unitarian Universalists, rather than getting caught up in all these attachments, including the attachment to thought, what if you were to submit to the will of God, however you envision God, as an omniscient, all-knowing being, as an interconnected web of all existence, as the natural world, an interconnected web of spirit, as love, however you envision God. Again, what if you were to submit to the path of God? a holy way of life, if you will. Philosopher Soren Kierkegaard makes what I believe is a very important point on this topic. Submitting to a holy way of life, a path of God, must be a conscious choice. You must make a decision. He says, God and self define themselves through the exercise of the will, meaning a choice, a decision. He continues, for human beings, in the absence of a decision, there is no self. Or more precisely, the self remains completely indeterminate. Wow. The self as indeterminate. Indeterminate. That's a haunting word in this context. It's like being without beingness. For Kierkegaard, a decision, a choice of a path, substantiates beingness. Without the conscious choice of a path to follow, one's life is simply on cruise control. Everything could be good. Everything could be fine, as long as I get my coffee, as long as I get to watch my shows, as long as the temperature in the room is just perfect, as long as I get my morning paper, yada, 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 right? Everything could be fine, but really, everything could be just slowly sliding down the slippery slope. And life is just biding its time, waiting to hurl its slings and arrows of outrageous fortune upon us. And when that does, my indeterminate self shouts, hey, when did all this crap show up? When did all this suffering show up? I believe this is a big problem in Unitarian Universalism. Perhaps the biggest problem. We like to think, we like to hear about, like Buddhism, oh, that was cool, or Hinduism, wow, I learned a lot, or paganism, I've never thought about it that way. We like to think about stuff. But we like to focus on ideas and thoughts. Yet regarding matters of faith, I don't think Unitarian Universalism asks anything of Unitarian Universalists. We aren't pushed enough. We aren't called upon. Kierkegaard would say, we aren't called to take a leap of faith. Perhaps the problem isn't truly with Unitarian Universalism. Perhaps it's with its ministers, like me. Maybe we, as spiritual leaders, need to ask more of our congregants. Maybe we, as spiritual leaders, need to make sure that our congregants have made a choice or on a path. Maybe it's our responsibility to see that they've made such a choice. I don't want any Unitarian Universalists, I don't want you to be indeterminate. Simply sliding down a slippery slope. I've already indicated that many religious traditions articulate that relinquishing attachments, desires, ego, and the self, you need to relinquish those things in order to submit and be obedient to a spiritual path. Yet many traditions also articulate that the very act of submitting to a path, being obedient to a path, leads to true freedom. In Dostoevsky's novel, The Brothers Karamazov, the aging abbot of the monastery teaches his disciples. He says, the monastic way is very different. Outside, Obedience, fasting, and prayer are laughed at. Yet only through them is the way to true, real freedom. I cut off my superfluous and unnecessary desires. I subdue my proud and wanton will and chastise it with obedience. And with God's help, I attain freedom of the Spirit, and with it, spiritual joy. It's not we, but those outside the monastery who are in isolation. And when you look about the world, rife with loneliness, desperation, brokenness, and suffering, he might be right. I quoted the Zen monk Suzuki earlier, yet I left out the final line of his words. I'll include it here. He said, "We cannot force anything, but once the rules have been decided, we should obey them completely until they are changed. It is not a matter of good or bad, convenient or inconvenient. You just do it without question." And the final line, "That way, your mind is free." You see this again and again and again and again in religion. Submitting to, being obedient to a spiritual path leads to true freedom. After making a conscious decision, a conscious choice to follow a path, after taking that leap of faith, it then mandates doing something. Following the path, it does not mandate any thinking. Again, Suzuki continues, "The most important thing in our practice is our physical posture and our way of breathing. We are not so concerned about deep understanding of Buddhism. As a philosophy, Buddhism is very deep and wide in a system of thought, but Zen is not concerned about philosophical understanding. We embrace practice. Instead of having a deep understanding, we need a strong confidence in the root of our belief in that we all have Buddha nature. And our practice is based on that faith." Suzuki. There seems to be no getting around it. The spiritual path, the path of freedom, has submission and obedience as requisites. The spiritual path, the path that speaks to you and perhaps to no one else, still requires a conscious decision, a leap of faith. My wish for you and for all of us is that we have the courage to take that leap of faith, and with obedience and submission, realize the path of true freedom.
In an effort to fulfill and further the vision and mission of this congregation, we ask that our members and friends share of their time, treasure, and talents. With this, we will now take the offering. You may also use the Givelify app.
We accept this sacred offering, generously given by our beloved members and friends. May we use it wisely and judiciously in service to our mission. Mirabai Starr, professor of philosophy and world religion at the University of New Mexico, writes of her longing connection to the ultimate. At times she felt connected, yet it was a fleeting connection, which could not be sustained. Then her 14-year-old daughter was killed in a car accident. Things changed, she writes. Death has been my own gateway to the numinous. I did not pick this path. With my daughter's death, suddenly, the sacred fire I'd been chasing all my life engulfed me. I was plunged into the abyss, instantaneously dropped into the vast stillness and pulsing silence at which all my favorite mystics hint. So shattered, I could not see my own hand in front of my face. I was suspended in the invisible arms of a love I had only dreamed of. Immolated, I found myself resting in fire. Drowning, I surrendered and discovered I could breathe underwater. I discovered that there was nowhere to hide when radical sorrow unraveled the fabric of my life. I could rage against the terrible unknown, and I did, for I am human and have this vulnerable body, passionate heart, and complicated mind. Or I could turn towards the cup, bow to the cupbearer, and say, yes. Even as we cry out in the anguish of loss, the boundless love of the Holy One comes pouring into the shattered container of our hearts. This replenishing of our emptiness is a mystery. It is grace, and it is built into the human condition. Few among us would ever opt for the narrow gate of grief, even if it were guaranteed to lead us to God. But if our most profound losses, the death of a loved one, the ending of a marriage or a career, catastrophic disease, or alienation from community, if that brings us to our knees before the threshold, we might as well enter. The beloved might be waiting in the next room.
Now, if you would turn to hymn number 1018, and Alex will play through it once before we start singing.
Come go with me to that land.
And now we extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Maybe I was wrong. Sorry about that. My fault. Submission, not triumph, ego triumph, or transcendence of the ordinary, means surrendering the life we wanted or expected for that which the gods call us for. May you have the courage to surrender and leap. Go in peace and enjoy your week.